I brought him coffee every morning for 6 years. Hazelnut cream, 2 sugars, just the way he liked it. And every morning he said thank you without looking up from his phone. I thought that was love. I really did. We had a rhythm, him and me. Wake up, no kisses, just the clink of mugs. I'd pack his lunch sometimes, slip in little notes that said dumb things like conquer the day, handsome, or dinner's on me, and it's your favorite. He never mentioned the notes. I figured maybe he just smiled privately the way some men do. Quiet affection, I told myself. I thought I understood him. I was wrong. It started with a smirk, not at me, at her, his secretary. Jenna, 26. Glossy hair, tight skirts, the kind of laugh that bends at the waist and draws attention like perfume. I used to think she was sweet, harmless, a little loud maybe, a little too friendly, but I trusted him. God don't I trusted him. Until I saw it. It was a Thursday morning. I brought his coffee into the office. He'd left his phone at home, and I figured, why not? I was already out running errands. He always liked when I dropped by. The receptionist knew me, smiled like she was glad to see me, but something flickered in her eyes. I should have known. I should have felt it, that quiet shift in energy women always feel before the world tips. I walked past the glass wall of his office and stopped. He was laughing. Not the polite business laugh I'd heard 1,000 times, not even the tired chuckle he used at home. This laugh was real, loose, boyish, and he was looking at her like she was the most interesting woman in the world. She said something I couldn't hear what, and touched his arm, just lightly. And then he smirked. That smirk, the kind you give someone when there is a private joke between you. The kind of smirk I hadn't seen on his face in years. I didn't knock. I turned around, coffee in hand, heart somewhere near my throat. I sat in the car for 23 minutes. I counted, because when something shatters inside you, you start counting things, seconds, mistakes, clues you missed. Was it the way he started staying later at work? Or how he stopped asking me how my day was? Maybe it was the way he flinched when I touched his shoulder in the kitchen last week. Like I'd startled him. Like he forgot I lived in that house. I didn't cry in the car. I just sat there, holding that damn coffee like it was still warm. Like if I held it long enough, everything would make sense again. When he came home that night, I tried to read his face. He kissed my cheek, said, "Busy day," and walked straight into the living room. No mention of the coffee, no mention of me showing up. He knew I saw. I know he did, but he pretended he didn't, and that hurt worse than anything. Because silence is its own kind of betrayal. It's not just what they do behind your back, it's how they look you in the eye after and lie with their smile. I started watching him quietly, the way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, the way he smiled at text then turned the screen over, the way he stopped telling me I looked beautiful when I got dressed up, but complimented Jenna's professional glow in passing. I heard it. I heard everything. And still, I stayed. Because leaving felt too final, too brave, and I wasn't brave yet. I was just broken. Quietly, neatly, the kind of broken that makes your voice soft and your smiles practiced. One night, I stood in the hallway, watching him asleep on the couch. He'd said he was too tired to come to bed. The TV flickered against his face. He looked peaceful, like nothing was wrong, and I realized something then. He had already left me. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally, he was gone. Months ago. Maybe longer. And she was just the shadow that filled the space where I used to live. I walked into the kitchen, opened the cupboard, looked at the coffee mugs, the one with the chip on the side, the one he always used. I picked it up, and I dropped it. It shattered into 4 pieces. I swept it up before he woke. The next morning, I still made coffee. Just 1 cup. For me, I sat at the table and drank it slowly, staring at the empty chair across from me. And I thought, what if I stopped bringing him coffee? What if I stopped showing up where I wasn't wanted? What if I became someone who didn't wait for a man to look up and notice her? What if I became the woman he never saw coming? And just like that, I knew what I had to do. The stain was so small I almost missed it. just a kiss of red on his shirt collar. But it wasn't my lipstick. And that was all it took. I wear nude tones. Always have. The kind that disappear when I press my lips together. Barely there, but still me. Never red. Never that. Bold. He came home humming. That was the second sign. Daniel doesn't hum. He sighs. He scrolls. He drops his keys on the hallway table and says, "Long day." But that night, he was light. Careless. His voice didn't carry exhaustion. It carried something sharper. Guilt disguised as joy. I stood in the kitchen, cutting carrots. The kind of slow, even slices you do when your mind's not really on dinner. He kissed my cheek and I flinched without meaning to. That's when I saw at the collar right near the button. "New shirt?" I asked. He glanced down. "Nah, just an old one I pulled from the back." I nodded, smiled even, but my fingers went cold on the knife. Later, while he was in the shower, I opened the hamper. I don't know what I was looking for exactly. Maybe a reason not to believe my gut. That's when the scent hit me. Not mine. Not soap. Not detergent. Something floral. Sharp. Too heavy for a workday, too deliberate to be accidental. It was on his collar, mixed in with the lipstick. I brought the fabric to my nose like I was reading Braille with my breath, and my stomach turned. I sat on the bathroom floor while he sang behind the curtain. I couldn't hear the words, just the melody. It like the sound of someone falling in love, but not with me. I stayed there until the water stopped. Got up fast. Pretended to be searching for a towel when he stepped out. He joked, "Caught you sneaking peeks again." I laughed. God, I actually laughed. The next day I woke up before him. I sat in bed watching his chest rise and fall like none of it had happened, like I hadn't found another woman's scent wrapped around his skin, like I didn't already know that whatever we had was unraveling quietly, deliberately. I should have said something, should have screamed, thrown the shirt at him and demanded the truth, but I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. Instead, I started watching, not obsessively, just differently, like I was no longer a wife but an investigator trying to prove what her heart already knew. I noticed how he picked up his phone when he thought I wasn't looking. The way his face changed softened when he read her texts. He smiled with his eyes, the way he used to with me. I noticed how he started dressing better. New cologne, tighter suits, polished shoes. He said it was for a pit, said the board was watching. But I wasn't the board, and I saw it all. I noticed how he started showering in the mornings and the evenings. Once he never had time, now he made time. And I noticed how he came home with less energy for me, as if he'd given the best parts of himself to someone else before stepping through our door. I started walking differently around him, softer, less present, just to see if he'd notice I was fading. He didn't, or maybe he did and he preferred it. One night I sat across from him at dinner and I couldn't stop staring at his hands. They used to touch me without thinking, brush my back in the kitchen, rest on my thigh during long drives, tuck my hair behind my ear when I read in bed. Now they just held his fork. I asked him quietly, "Are you happy?" He blinked. "What? With us?" I said. "Are you happy with us?" He chewed, swallowed, wiped his mouth. "Of course," he said. "Why would you ask that?" And then he smiled. That same easy, empty smile he used to lie to me every day. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded. "Just wondering," I said. That night, I sat in the dark long after he fell asleep. Our bedroom smelled like lavender and sweat and a lie I hadn't named yet. I looked at him. Really looked. He didn't seem like my husband anymore. He seemed like someone I used to know. Someone I once believed in so deeply I built my life around him. But now he was just a stranger who wore my love like an old coat, useful, familiar, but not exciting anymore. And I realized something then, something quiet and brutal. I wasn't afraid of losing him. I was afraid he'd already left. And I didn't even notice when. I pulled the sheets off slowly and walked out into the hallway. I needed air. I needed space. I stood by the front door, hand on the knob, thinking, if I opened this door now, would he even wake up? Would he chase me? Or would he just roll over, sigh, and text her in the morning? And that's when I knew. It wasn't the lipstick. It wasn't the perfume. It was the silence that came after. The way he made me feel like a ghost in my own home. I don't know what I'm gonna do yet. But I know one thing. The next time he comes home smelling like her, he won't find me waiting. He said he was working late, but she answered his hotel room door barefoot, smiling and wearing his shirt. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, holding a dinner I'd packed in foil, like a fool carrying hope in a paper bag. It was supposed to be a surprise. Chicken piccata, his favorite. I even remembered the little plastic container of capers. He always said it wasn't the same without them. He'd forgotten his lunch that morning, so I figured maybe dinner would soften the week, bridge the distance. God, I was still trying, still hoping it was stress, pressure, burnout. That all the late nights and cold shoulders were something we could fix. Something I could fix. He'd texted an hour ago, running late. Don't wait up. But something in me didn't sit right. It wasn't the first time. This one just felt different. Tinal. I don't know why, but I suddenly couldn't breathe in our house anymore. Couldn't sit at our table and pretend I didn't hear the silence between us growing louder. So I drove. I remembered the hotel from one of his work emails. I wish I hadn't. I wish I was the kind of woman who didn't notice things like that. But I do. I remember everything. The lobby was warm, gold-lit, humming with soft jazz and the sound of clinking glasses. A man in a suit opened the door for me, and I smiled like I belonged there, like I wasn't about to destroy my own world with a knock. I took the elevator up to the 5th floor, room 52-4. I still remember the carpet pattern, blue swirls like waves crashing beneath me. I knocked. 3 soft taps, hesitant, like I hoped no one would answer. And then she did. Blonde, blushed, lipstick a little smudged, and barefoot, like she hadn't expected company. Or maybe like she had, but not me. She blinked, smiled, confused. Can I help you? I didn't answer right away. My eyes went past her to the rumpled sheets behind her, to the open wine bottle on the dresser, to the belt I'd given him last Christmas, hanging over a chair. That's when I saw it. The shirt. My husband's shirt. His favorite. The one with the faint stripe and loose second button. The one I'd ironed 100 times. The one I'd washed with lavender softener just 2 days ago. It was on her. Not in a drawer. Not on a hanger. On her skin. Against her body. Like she had claimed it and him with no shame at all. She followed my eyes and then her smile vanished. Wait, are you? And before she could finish the sentence, he appeared behind her. Hair wet from a shower, no shirt, no lies left. His face dropped when he saw me. He didn't speak, just froze. I wish he'd said something, anything. I wish he'd lied, denied, gotten angry, something to push against, but he didn't. He just looked. Sorry, and sorry was worse than hate. Sorry meant he knew what he did. Sorry meant it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. I nodded once, tightly, like I'd just gotten the answer to a question I hadn't asked out loud. Then I turned, walked back down that hallway, past the swirls in the carpet, past the elevator, out into the night. I didn't cry in the car. I just sat there, holding the dinner bag on my lap like it was still warm, like it mattered. I didn't go home. I drove to a parking lot near the pier, rolled down the windows and listened to the ocean hit the rocks. That's when the shaking started. Not loud, not violent, just quiet trembles in my hands that I couldn't stop. Like my body knew before my heart did this. Wasn't a wound I'd come back from. He hadn't just slept with someone else. He'd invited her into our life, into our routines, our moments, our shared silences. She was probably the reason he started using a new shampoo, the reason he stopped wearing cologne, the reason he laughed more when he wasn't with me. And me, I was the background noise, the soft music he'd turned down so he could hear her voice clearer. I thought about all the nights I stayed up late making sure he had clean socks, all the times I rubbed his back when he was stressed, all the times I held him when he said he felt like a failure. And this is how he said thank you, with a hotel room and a girl who wore his shirt better than he thought I ever did. I didn't go home until morning, and when I walked through that front door, the first thing I did wasn't pack my bags. It was take his shirt out of the laundry bin, the twin of the one she wore. I held it in my hands and realized he gave her the version of him I once believed in. But the truth didn't whisper. It screamed. And now, I can finally hear it. It was supposed to be our anniversary. Instead, I sat in a parking lot across from the restaurant watching him celebrate it with her. I didn't plan to follow him. I didn't plan anything. I just knew. You know that feeling when your heart starts grieving before your mind even confirms it? That's what happened. He said he had a work dinner, but he didn't wear his work tie. He wore the one I gave him last year, the one he said was too special for client meetings. I told myself not to overthink it. I told myself a lot of things. He left the house at 7. I waited until 7:22 before I got in the car. I didn't even grab my coat, just my keys, and my pride I think I still had a little left at that point. I parked behind the florist shop across the street. The lights from the restaurant spilled out onto the sidewalk like gold leaking from a wound. It was the place we went to every year. Table by the window, white wine, creme brulee for 2. The waiter always remembered us. I remember thinking maybe he's alone. Maybe he just didn't want to face me tonight. Maybe we're both hurting and don't know how to say it anymore. And then I saw her, laughing, tossing her hair back, reaching for his hand across the table like she'd held it 1,000 times before. He laughed too, that easy, open laugh I hadn't heard in months. I sat there, engine off, hands frozen on the steering wheel. I couldn't even cry at first. I just stared, watched the way he looked at her like she was the beginning of something, not the destruction of everything. The street lamp above me flickered, a soft, stupid little buzz that kept pulling me back to myself. I wanted to get out. I wanted to march in there, stand over their table, and ask, "Do you remember what day it is?" But I didn't move. I just broke. Quietly. Tears came fast and hot, blurring the windshield until their silhouettes melted into each other. I pressed my sleeve to my face, wiped, breathed, failed. They toasted. He smiled, and I sat in a parking lot, breaking apart in a car that still smelled like his cologne. I think that was the worst part, how ordinary it all looked, like he hadn't just set fire to our marriage in that candlelit booth. Like I didn't exist, like I never had. I remembered the morning he proposed. He was nervous. His hands shook when he held the ring. He said, "You make me feel like I belong somewhere." I believed him. Every damn word. And now he belonged somewhere else, with someone else. On a night that used to belong to us. I whispered, "Happy anniversary," to myself. And the sound of it cracked something in me I hadn't realized was still whole. I should have called someone. A friend. My sister. Anyone. But how do you say that out loud? "Hey, I'm parked across from my husband's affair. Do you want to come cry with me?" So I just stayed there, watching, waiting for something. A sign, a miracle, a rewind button. Instead, I got headlights. Their dinner ended. They walked out together. He had his hand on her back the way he used to guide me through doors. She leaned into him like she belonged, like I didn't exist on the other side of the street watching every second of it. And for a moment, I thought he saw me. His eyes swept the lot, lingered, but maybe that is just what my heart wanted to believe. Because he turned away, he opened the car door for her, and they drove off. I stayed, in that cold car, with mascara on my shirt and pain in my lungs. I looked at the empty restaurant window, table cleared, candles blown out, and I whispered something to myself that didn't sound like me. I deserve more than this. And the thing is, I actually meant it. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. Because tonight wasn't just about losing him. It was about finally seeing what I'd become while loving someone who stopped loving me. And I don't know what comes next. But I know it doesn't include waiting in parking lots for a man who dines on my memories with someone else. He looked me dead in the eyes and called me insecure like I was the problem. Like I had imagined the late nights, the deleted messages, the perfume that didn't belong to me. And I didn't even flinch. I just stood there, hand on the kitchen counter, wedding ring twisting slowly around my finger, wondering when exactly he'd stopped respecting me, not loving me, part had faded a while ago, slowly, like fog lifting from a lake. But the respect, the basic human decency, that was what cracked me. It was over something small, as these things often are. A phone left face down at dinner, a glance too long at a text that made him smile in that quiet, guilty way. I asked him softly who it was. He rolled his eyes. You need to stop. Seriously, this is getting old. You're so insecure, it's exhausting. And then he went back to eating, like he hadn't just gut-punched me with a word I'd never let myself believe I was. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just picked up my plate, walked it to the sink, and nodded. You're right, I said. It is getting old. He didn't notice the shift. Or maybe he did, but didn't think I was capable of anything more than sad silence. That night, while he watched TV in the living room, I sat in the bedroom with my laptop and typed 3 words into Google. Divorce lawyer near me. It felt like betrayal. Not against him, but against the woman I used to be. The one who forgave, who made excuses, who thought if she just worked a little harder, loved a little more, smiled a little brighter, things would go back to how they were. But that woman was tired, and she'd been sleeping beside a man who made her feel like a burden in her own home. I didn't make an appointment that night. I just bookmarked the page. But it felt like a beginning. The next morning, I woke up before him, made coffee like always, toasted his bread, added the jam he liked, put it all on a plate like it was any other day. He kissed my cheek and said, "Thanks, babe," and I smiled. Because now I had the secret, not the affair, not the lies, not the guilt he buried under charm. Mine was different. Mine was colder. Mine was a plan. Over the next few weeks, I became the best actress I'd ever seen, played the part of the dutiful wife, nodded at his stories, laughed when I had to, pretended not to notice the way he typed faster when I walked into the room, but I was watching. I was listening. I opened a bank account in my own name, quietly, casually, shifted small amounts. Nothing he'd notice, just enough to breathe. I started saving emails, screenshot, little breadcrumbs of proof, not for court, necessarily, but for myself. So when doubt crept in at night, I could scroll through the receipts and remind myself, you're not crazy, you're not dramatic, you're not insecure, you're right. One morning, I went to the lawyer's office while he was at work. I told them everything, not just about him, but about me, about who I'd become, trying to hold on to a marriage he'd already walked out of emotionally. They listened, took notes, slid papers across the table. Take your time, the woman said gently. You don't have to sign today. But I did. I signed with a calm hand and a steady breath. Because I was done waiting to feel worthy. I didn't tell him right away. I let a few more days pass. Let him dig the hole deeper. One night he came home late again. Said he'd had a team dinner. He smelled like cheap wine and lavender perfume. I helped him out of his coat, hung it up, kissed his cheek, and thought, you don't even know you've already lost me. The next morning, I left the papers on the kitchen counter with a sticky note. You were right. I was insecure. But now I'm free. He called me 12 times that day. I didn't pick up. He texted, "Can we talk? Don't do this. We can fix it." But by then I had already changed the locks, already packed what was mine, already booked a room with a view and a silence that didn't ache. And the funny thing is, I didn't feel broken, I felt powerful. Because walking away from someone who breaks you slowly is its own kind of revenge. He told everyone I blindsided him, said I gave up too fast. But the truth is, I stayed long after my heart left. I stayed until there was nothing left of me to save. He called me insecure, and I called a divorce lawyer. But what I really called that day was myself for the first time in years. He broke me on a Tuesday, but I didn't let myself fall until Friday night. That was the night I realized the man I loved wasn't coming back and maybe never existed. It happened quietly, like all endings do. No shouting, no slammed doors, just that slow, aching unravel. The way he stopped reaching for my hand in public, The way he started saying I'm tired instead of I love you. Little things, silent things, until it wasn't little anymore. He left me in pieces, still smiling, still pretending, still bringing home flowers like they could cover up lipstick on his collar. And I was supposed to be grateful, grateful for the crumbs, grateful for being chosen even if I wasn't the only one. But I wasn't. I was done. I remember the day I met Adrian Caldwell, CEO of the firm, my husband's mentor, the kind of man who walks into a room and people straighten their backs without knowing why. He used to smile at us, me and Daniel, like we were the couple everyone rooted for. One time years ago, Adrian clinked glasses with me at a holiday party and said, "He's a lucky man. Don't let this world turn you bitter." And I didn't. Not until he did. Daniel had been working late again, and I was tired of playing detective in my own marriage. So I put on the black dress he used to love, the one with the low back and soft neckline, and showed up at the fundraiser alone. I didn't go to make a statement. I went because I needed to feel like a woman again, not a placeholder, not a background character in my own story. The moment I walked in, Adrian saw me. His eyes tracked me like he wasn't used to being surprised. I smiled gently, raised a glass of champagne. I didn't mean anything by it. Not then. But when he walked over, slow, deliberate, confident, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Seen. "You look," he started, then paused, and smiled, like someone who knows exactly what she is doing. I laughed. "Is that your polite way of saying I don't belong here without a husband on my arm?" He shook his head. "No, it's my way of saying you never needed him in the first place." And that wrecked me more than any of Daniel's lies ever could, because it was the truth. We spent most of the evening talking, not flirting, not scheming, just talking, about life, about books, about the things I used to love before I shrank myself to fit Daniel's shadow. And somewhere in the middle of his third story, something about his trip to Greece and falling into a fountain, I realized he wasn't just being kind. He was choosing me, not because I was safe, not because I was convenient, but because he saw something in me that even I had forgotten was there. It scared me. The next morning, I woke up alone in my bed. Daniel's side was still cold, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't care. That same morning, Adrian sent me flowers. No note, just calla lilies, quiet and elegant, like the night we shared. I stood over the sink with the cardless bouquet in my hands, wondering what exactly this meant. Was it a gesture, a line, a beginning, or just a man being decent in a world full of boys pretending? Daniel walked in while I was trimming the stems. "Who are those from?" I didn't answer right away. "Work," I said, and turned back to the sink. He snorted. "Right. So now you're the one getting attention from the boss." There it was, the irony, the venom, the man who cheated first, accusing me of what he feared I might be capable of. I dried my hands slowly. Then I said it. Calm, measured, final. "If I was," I said, "at least he'd know how to treat a woman like she matters." Daniel blinked, like he hadn't expected me to have a voice anymore, and I knew then I had all the power I needed. I didn't have to sleep with Adrian to get revenge. I didn't need to prove anything. I just had to remember who I was before I let love turn me into a shadow. But Adrian, he didn't just admire me. He respected me, and when he offered me a position a week later, one Daniel had secretly wanted, I took it. Not for spite, not for drama, but because the universe had handed me a hand that wasn't just stronger, it was steady, and I took it. Not just Adrian's, mine. And when Daniel found out, let's just say, for the first time in years, he saw me walk away, and realized I wasn't looking back. He bought the ring for her, but I wore it to the gala. No one needed to know the story. The diamond did all the talking. It was heavy on my hand, colder than it should have been, like even the metal remembered who it wasn't meant for. But I wore it anyway, not out of pettiness, not even out of pride. I wore it because it was the last thing he never got to give her, and I wanted her to see it. She was going to be there. Of course she was. He would have brought her, dressed her up in some excuse of dignity, introduced her with a nervous laugh like, "This is Jenna. She works with me," wasn't a joke. Everyone already knew the punchline too. I wasn't supposed to be at the gala, That's what made it perfect. I was invited, sure. Years of being the wife, the hostess, the one who knew which fork went with which course. I had my place. But lately I'd let it go quiet, played the good ghost, the humiliated wife who disappears with grace. Until now, because the moment I found the ring in his desk, still in the velvet box, tucked beneath an envelope labeled private, I knew what I had to do. He never gave it to her, and now, he never would. I slipped it on the night before just to see how it felt. It slid over my knuckle like it belonged there, like it had been waiting for me. And maybe it had in some twisted, poetic way. Maybe he didn't even know who it was really for. I wore a black dress, clean lines, backless, timeless, the kind that makes silence follow you into a room. My hair was up, makeup soft. I didn't want to look loud, I wanted to look untouchable. When I stepped out of the car, the doorman did a double take. Not because I was beautiful, because I looked different. He said, "Mrs. Langston, we weren't expecting you." I smiled. Neither was he. Inside, the room glittered with champagne and secret. Laughter floated like perfume, light and rehearsed. Everyone played their parts. Until I walked in. Heads turned. Conversations paused. And then the whispers started, because they all saw it. The ring. It wasn't just a diamond. It was the diamond, the one he'd been seen shopping for, the one she'd bragged about to her friends before it was even hers, the one that never made it to her finger because I beat her to it with my silence, with my dignity, with my timing. I saw her first, standing near the stage, pretending she belonged. She wore red. Of course she did, the kind of red that says look at me because he's not looking at her the way she wants him to. And then she did. She looked at me, right at my hand. Her eyes widened just enough for me to see the moment she realized. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. I just walked past her like she was furniture. Then I saw him, Daniel. He was standing with two board members, fake laughing, drink in hand. That confident, smirking mask he always wore when he thought he'd won. Until he saw me, and then he stopped laughing. His eyes dropped to the ring, and I watched his jaw tighten. Good. Let him feel it. Let him remember that. This woman, the one he left behind, called dramatic, called too much, was the one who now wore the future he tried to give someone else. He walked toward me. I stayed still. "Can we talk?" he said, voice low, like maybe if he whispered it, the shame wouldn't echo. I tilted my head. About what? He glanced down at the ring, then at Jenna now standing stiff behind him, like someone had ripped the script out of her hands. That wasn't meant for don't, I cut in. Calm. Even. Don't lie in front of both of us. He looked tired suddenly. Small. "I didn't think you'd come tonight," he said. "I wasn't planning to." "Then why?" "Because I remembered who I am," I said. "And I wanted her to remember too." He opened his mouth, closed it, and I walked away. I didn't need to stay long, just long enough to remind them both that I was not the woman you leave behind without consequences. That ring, it was never about love. It was about power, and he gave it away the moment he thought I had none left. I left the gala early, slipped out before the speeches, before dessert, before anyone had the chance to corner me with their polished sympathy. In the car, I stared at my hand. The ring sparkled under the streetlight, catching the last flickers of a life I no longer needed. And I whispered to myself softly, "Next time I'll buy my own." He chased me into the lobby like he hadn't spent the last 6 months slowly making me disappear. "Please," he said, "just talk to me." I kept walking, my heels echoing too loud against the marble, his voice, suddenly desperate, floating behind me like an apology made too late to matter. The elevator hadn't come yet, so I had to stand there, waiting, breathing, trying not to shatter. I didn't look at him. I looked at the wall ahead, blank, still, the way I had learned to be when he started choosing someone else. He reached for my arm, hesitated, then pulled his hand back like he remembered who I was now. Not his wife, not his comfort, just the woman who had stopped answering his calls. "I know I messed up," he said, voice breaking at the edges. "I know, But we were good. We were so good, don't let her ruin that. Her. As if she were the storm and not the shelter he willingly ran to. I turned. And there she was, standing at the other end of the lobby by the glass doors. His secretary, his shadow, the one who smiled at me with polite teeth before I knew what she was doing behind my back. She didn't look smug. She didn't look sorry either. She just watched, like she was trying to decide who to believe now that he was falling apart. I looked at her first. Not him. Her. Because I needed her to see what he looked like when he begged. He always said I was dramatic. That I overthought things. That I read into stuff too much. He said it with a smile, of course. Said it while checking his phone. Said it while turning off the light in bed before I finished speaking. But now he was the one who couldn't stop talking. Please, he said again. Don't just walk away. You know me. You know me. You know me. And I did. That was the problem. I knew how he'd say all the right things when he was scared. How he'd reach out only when something slipped out of his grasp. How he didn't miss me, he missed the comfort of being forgiven. I stared at him for a long time, then finally asked, "Why did you do it?" He blinked. I don't know. I laughed, quietly, sadly. You don't know, I said. You knew how I'd feel. You knew what it would cost. And you still chose her, over and over. That's not confusion. That's cruelty in disguise. He shook his head. It wasn't like that. It wasn't serious. I flinched like he'd hit me. Not serious. Like the nights I cried myself to sleep or a punchline. Like the dinners that went cold waiting for him meant nothing because she didn't matter to him. Then what does that make me? I whispered. A placeholder. No, he said, stepping closer. You were everything. You always were. That's why it's killing me. You are my home. I looked down at his hands. Open, trembling. And all I could think was, where were those hands when I needed holding? I looked past him to her again. Still silent. Still watching. It hit me then that she wasn't going to fight for him. Not in the way I used to. She'd already gotten what she wanted. The thrill. The attention. The ruin. But she wouldn't stay when the chaos stopped being fun. And I'd already stayed too long. I'm not your home, I said quietly. I'm your consequence. The elevator dinged. I stepped in without another word. He didn't follow. And she turned and walked away. He made me sign it with a smirk on his face. Said, "It's just business, babe. You get it, right?" I did get it. I got it more than he ever knew. We were engaged for 3 weeks when he handed me the prenup. Polished language, gold-trimmed stationery, like he thought that would soften the blow. I was supposed to laugh, kiss his cheek, tell him I understood. And I did, out loud, at least. I smiled, took the pen, and signed it. He didn't even read it back after. Didn't walk me through the details. Just kissed my forehead and said, "You're a smart girl. I know you won't make this difficult." He meant the divorce. He meant the day he'd leave me, and deep down I think I knew it too. But I signed the paper anyway. Not because I was weak, but because I was already planning who I'd become when he walked away. He always saw me as soft. He'd call it cute when I cried during sad movies. Said I was too sensitive when I asked about the lipstick on his shirt. Said I was overreacting when I brought up the text messages from his assistant at midnight. You always assume the worst, he'd said. Turns out I didn't assume enough. Because he cheated. Not just once. Not just a mistake. A full-blown, weekends away, travel together, meet the parents kind of affair. And he thought I'd just quietly fold, hand him my dignity with a polite smile. But he forgot the clause, the one his lawyer insisted was meaningless, the one he barely glanced at, the one that stated word for word that, if infidelity could be proven during the marriage, the lesser-earning party would receive 60% of all marital assets. He laughed when he signed it. I'd never be dumb enough to get caught, he joked. And then he did. Security cameras at the hotel. A dinner bill he didn't hide well. Her perfume still clinging to his jacket when he walked through our front door. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I poured him a glass of wine, sat across from him, and said, I know. He blinked. Know what? About you and Jenna. The glass nearly slipped from his hand. I know. No, that's not. Don't lie. Silence. It stretched between us like the end of a long rope that had finally snapped. He exhaled, set the wine down. I didn't mean for it to happen. That's what they always say. I nodded. Calm. Too calm. Because I wasn't thinking about the betrayal anymore. I was thinking about the paperwork. You're right, I said. Things happen. People change. So let's just be adults about this. He looked relieved, almost smug, like I'd already agreed to walk away quietly with nothing. He had no idea what was coming. The next day, I filed the paperwork, attached the proof, every receipt, every photo, every timestamp. 3 weeks later, my lawyer called. You ready? She asked. For what? To become a very rich woman. When the judge read the clause out loud, I watched his face. Daniel's, not the judge's. That perfect, arrogant, bulletproof face. Crack. He leaned over, whispering to his attorney like he could undo his own signature with a few words. But he couldn't. He signed it. He mocked it. He made it legally binding. And now, I owned the house, the cars, the savings he once said I didn't contribute enough to have a claim on. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. I wanted the quiet satisfaction of watching him lose the one thing he always cared more about than me, control. He tried to talk to me after court. Said, you don't need to do this. But I just smiled. I'm not doing anything, I said. I just read the fine print and walked away. The part I didn't tell him, that I never planned on using it. Not back then, not when I signed it with shaky hands and a lump in my throat, wondering if agreeing to that prenup meant I didn't believe in us. But now I know, believing in him would have ruined me. Believing in myself saved me. He took my heart, and I took everything else. He said her name with his hands on her waist, but then he looked in her eyes and said mine. I wasn't there to hear it, but I didn't have to be. She told me herself. It was a month after the divorce, a month after he hit me with unanswered texts, and a box of my things on the porch like I'd been nothing more than clutter in his life. She messaged me on Instagram. No hello, no context. Just, did you know he called me by your name? I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I laughed. A dry, cracked sound I didn't recognize. Not because it was funny, but because it was familiar, because deep down, I knew he would. They always think they've won, the ones who come after. They think taking him means beating me. That, being chosen, somehow validates every lie he ever told. That, my silence means defeat. But ghosts don't vanish quietly. And I don't haunt gently. I remember the first time he said my name like it was a promise. We were at a gas station off the interstate. Nothing romantic. Nothing special. He leaned in to kiss me through the open car window, and he said, I'm never letting you go, okay? You hear me? Grox. I remember thinking, this is it. The moment that seals something. And I guess it did. Because even now, after everything, my name still lives on his tongue like muscle memory. She messaged again. We were in bed. Of course they were. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't tired. He just said it, whispered it, and then froze. I imagined it. Her lips parting, his body stilling. That one split second, where truth enters like cold air through a broken window. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. C had sent me smiley faces once. Back when I still wore the title of wife. I remember seeing them pop up on his phone. Casual, innocent looking, like a woman who didn't mind stepping over someone else's home as long as she was barefoot and giggling. I wondered if she still smiled like that, now. I didn't respond to her message. What was there to say? Yes, he loved me once. Yes, he left. And yes, he's still chasing ghosts in your bed. I wasn't going to give her that. Because the truth is, he didn't choose me, and now he can't forget me. That's not a victory. That's a curse. He called last week. Hey, he said, like we were still something. Just wanted to see how you were doing. I almost hung up. But I didn't. I let the silence do the talking. He cleared his throat. Oh, I've been thinking about you. I bet you have. I stayed quiet. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I'd already said everything. With my absence, with my peace, with the fact that he had to reach back to remember who made him feel whole. Finally, I said, "Why now?" He exhaled. "I don't know. Things don't feel the same." "You mean with her?" "Yeah." Silence again. Then he added, "She's great. Really. But it's like, I don't know. Something's missing." I wanted to say, "What's missing is me." But I didn't. Instead, I said, "Maybe it's not what's missing. Maybe it's what you threw away." He didn't respond, just breathed heavy on the line like he knew I was right and didn't know how to live with it. And the worst part, I didn't even want him back. That's what he doesn't understand. This isn't about wanting him to regret it. This is about me finally not needing his apology to feel whole. She thought she won the game when he chose her. She thought she won that beat me at love. But love isn't a prize. It's a mirror, and now she sees what I saw. A man who chases what he doesn't understand and forgets what he held too tightly until it slips through. I know she still sleeps beside him, but I also know, now, she hears my name when he closes his eyes. And that's not love. That's a wound with lipstick on. He asked if I'd take him back while standing 3 feet away from the man who actually did. The air in the room shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just tight, like everyone had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. I stood there, frozen in the middle of the gallery, wine glass in hand, heart steady, face unreadable. Because the moment was his, but the choice was mine. It was an art fundraiser, neutral ground, or at least it was supposed to be. I hadn't expected to see him there. Daniel, the man who broke me into silence and then blamed the quiet on me. He approached slowly, eyes soft, voice lower than I remembered. His suit was sharp, tailored, but nothing could cover the desperation clinging to his smile. "You look amazing," he said. I gave him a polite nod. "Thank you." My husband Michael was just steps away, speaking with one of the curators. He glanced over at me, caught Daniel in his periphery, and I saw the shift in his jaw. But he didn't interrupt. Because he trusted me, Daniel glanced toward him too, then looked back at me. "Is that him?" he asked. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The way Michael held his presence said everything. Daniel leaned in just slightly, voice quieter now. "I didn't think this would be so hard." "What?" I asked. "Seeing you," he said. "Seeing you with someone else." I tilted my head. "You were fine seeing me alone." His eyes flinched. He knew I was right. For years he left me emotionally starved, blamed me when I asked for more. And when I finally walked away, finally found someone who didn't make me beg to feel loved, he decided that was too much to bear. I started to step past him, but his hand brushed my wrist. "Wait, just please. I just need to say something." I stayed still. Barely. He looked over at Michael again. Then back at me. "I made a mistake," he said. "I should have fought for us. I should have seen what I had when I had it." My throat tightened, but I didn't let it show. "I know it's selfish," he said. "But would you ever take me back?" That's when Michael walked over. Calm, grounded, like he'd seen this, coming from the moment we entered the room. He didn't say anything, just stood beside me. Daniel glanced between us, suddenly unsure. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the man I once loved, but the man who taught me what love isn't. And the words left my mouth so gently, they almost sounded kind. "No," I said. "Never." Daniel's face fell. "I didn't stop there. I don't hate you. I don't even regret you. But the version of me that needed your approval no longer exists. She died the night you asked her to lower her standards one more time just to keep the peace." Michael reached for my hand. I let him hold it. Daniel stared at our hands, then at me. The shame in his eyes wasn't just for what he lost. It was for realizing he never really understood what he had. He nodded once, slowly, and walked away. The room returned to its hum. Glasses clinked. Laughter resumed. but something had shifted in me. Not pain, not relief, just closure. Michael looked at me. "You okay?" he asked. I smiled softly. "I'm finally free. And the best part? I didn't have to raise my voice to reclaim my worth. I just had to speak the truth he was never ready to hear. I didn't just lose a husband, I lost the version of me who believed I needed him to be whole. And the woman who rose from that wreckage, she didn't ask for permission. The day he left, the world didn't stop. The sky didn't crack open. No one came to comfort me with wine and wisdom. It was just me, sitting on the kitchen floor, in silence, staring at the key he dropped on the counter before walking out. It was almost funny how quiet it was. I used to think heartbreak would sound like breaking glass or sobs echoing through empty rooms, but it sounded more like a slow exhale, a page turning, a door closing with no slam. Just finality. The first few days blurred. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat. I just sat in the shadows of our old life, replaying every moment he looked me in the eye and lied. Every time he said it's nothing when I asked about her. Every dinner I made with hands that were shaking from doubt. But then something happened. I woke up one morning and realized I wasn't sad. I was angry, not the wild, destructive kind. The cold kind. The kind that clears the fog. That sharpens you. That makes you look in the mirror and say, "Never again." That, when I called Adrian. Yes, that Adrian, the CEO, his mentor, the man who used to smile at me like he saw something my husband never did. I didn't call him for revenge. I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just needed to remember that I existed outside of what I lost. He invited me to lunch. Polite, respectful. "You look different," he said, the moment I sat down. "I am different," I told him. He nodded like he understood. And by the end of that meal, I had a job offer. One that put me back in the boardroom, back where I used to stand before I let love soften my ambition. I took it. Not to prove a point. To prove I was still mine. Working with Adrian wasn't a romance. Not at first. It was strategy. Confidence. Late nights of numbers and presentations, and rediscovering the woman I buried beneath grocery lists and broken trust. But somewhere in that climb, something shifted. One night we were in his office reviewing a contract, and he looked at me, really looked. He said, "You know, I always wondered why he never saw it." "Saw what?" I asked. He smiled. "What you could be if someone just let you." I didn't respond, but my heart did. Fast forward 8 months. My ex showed up at the launch party. I was on stage, standing beside Adrian, announcing our newest global expansion. And there he was, in the back, alone. I wore red, not for him, for me. Because that night I wasn't his ex-wife. I was the woman who now sat on the board. The woman whose name was on the press release. The woman who walked away with her head high and never looked back. He caught me by the elevator. His voice was quiet, almost human. "You really did it," he said. I did. He looked at the ring on my finger. Adrian's ring. A simple band. Elegant. Powerful. "She's beautiful," he said, nodding toward the room. "The life you built." I smiled. "It was built on ashes." He flinched, then whispered, "Do you still think of me?" I looked at him, and for a second I didn't see the man I used to love. I saw the one who underestimated me. "No," I said. "But sometimes I think of the woman who thought you were the best she could do." He didn't speak again. He just nodded and walked away. That night, I stood by the window of the penthouse suite. Adrian and I now shared. City lights below me, my name glowing on the side of a building. And I thought, I didn't just survive. I rewrote the ending, because I lost a husband and became a queen, and the throne was mine all along.